Hello, my name is Rebecca Simon. On behalf of the Cinnamon production, I welcome all our viewers. Our guest today in the studio is Mark Reed. He is the candidate for 30th Congressional District in California, which encompasses most of the San Fernando Valley. Mark Reed is a small business owner and a rancher, and he will be facing the incumbent on November 3rd, 2020. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Rebecca.
Thank you for joining us in the studio to sit down and talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate your invitation to come and have a frank and honest conversation with you.
Frank and honest it will be.
Yes.
Mark, this is your fourth attempt in running for Congress. You ran in 2012,
Yes.
2014, 2016, and now finally 2020. What do you think will be different this time around?
I think everybody is waking up to the Democrat leadership, including the registered Democrat, and the way in which they're operating their policies, initiating the policies. We're involved right now in a major class warfare. It's not, the racism. It's not what's going on. It's not even the COVID-19. It's really about classism. The policies that are being handed down are a frontal assault on the working class people, on the middle class. Especially here in California, you can see 1,700 companies leaving every year looking for better policies. So we're looking at right now, and this time, is that people are waking up to that policy disaster. And it's all being led by the Democrat leadership. And the Democrats are waking up to this. The small businesses are waking up to it.
And during these Corona times, and Governor Newsom just
Right.
locked down the entire state
Right.
once again. How do you manage to let the voters hear your issues, hear your solutions, and hear your messages, with being very difficult to campaign these days?
Well, it's challenging on our side, but think about this. It's also challenging to the incumbent. Usually the incumbent will just automatically be invited to every little, opening of a letter because he's the incumbent. He is not given the same opportunity. So now it gets into the social media game. Who is better at it? We have a show of our own that you're aware of. We have 10,000 viewers on that every month. So people.
What's the name of the show?
It's called The Voice of Reason on LA Talk Radio. My co-host happens to be a Black African, an African-American Black Democrat from the South. So we wanted to establish a show over a year ago to show people what civility really looks like. What can a Republican and a Democrat talk about without getting into a fist fight? So many people, because of the times, this administration, the rhetoric that is being pushed out there, the agenda that's being pushed out there by our media now, has family members fighting each other over what? Again, it's just policies. If you look at the policies and you look at the pragmatic repercussions of any policy that's put out there, then you start understanding, I need to vote for the policy person, not the personality of a person.
Absolutely agreed with that. What are some of the issues that you are completely on the opposite side with the incumbent?
Well, the incumbent is for the lawlessness that's taking place. He's for the open borders, no real immigration check at all. He is supportive of the Black Lives Matter. Now, don't get me wrong. The racial issues that are there, we're always going to have racism in this country. Racism is founded in prejudice. And then you look at, the prejudice goes into a discrimination act, which is a verb. It's an action. Racism is another action. We'll always have discrimination. We're always going to have racism built on the foundation of prejudice. Prejudice would fail to exist if we had better education, if we had better opportunities for people to get to know each other. So you look at that in Black Lives Matter, it isn't sustained by facts. There are no real facts to sustain it. You look at they say this police brutality. You have Black Lives Matter coming out in Los Angeles saying that the Los Angeles Police Department is murderers or killers. There are these things. Even the mayor, Eric Garcetti, came out and said they're killers. And the facts are very simple. You had over 10 million arrests by police, by law enforcement nationwide. Of those over 10 million arrests, you had 1,004 that led to a use of force that led to the death of the perpetrator, of the victim, basically. Of those, you had 44 that were unarmed. Okay, now you really question, well, if they were unarmed, how did they lead to a death of that particular person? Of those 44 incidents, 9 of them were black and 19 of them were white. You look at that and you say, okay, well, how many cops died in the same year? 89 cops died that year. So where is the foundation? Where is the stats that support their argument? It's not there. Where is the systemic racism? You know, I had Bob Woodson on our show. You look at Terrence Sowell as well. These individuals come out and they'll tell you flat out, look, the only oppression that exists is your self-oppression. Nobody is keeping you behind. Look at our last administration, a black president. Look at the last UN, black UNs, representatives for the United States of America. Our attorney generals, 2 of them, black, both male and female. You look at the opportunities that are there if they work for it, if they go for it. The Malcolm X warned the black community, back in 1984, watch out for the liberal white and watch out for the conservative white, but more watch out for the liberal white because they have perfected deceit and lying. They will use you to their means to get what they want. They will use you as a political pawn and then throw you away. If you look at the past, going all the way back to 1867, the first Civil Rights Act was the Supreme Court then overturned. Then you look at 1967 with Johnson in office, and he was going to sign the Civil Rights Act in 1968. Now, Democrat president, filthy racist is what he really was. He came out and said, we have to give these ends something.
On Air Force One.
Yeah, we have to give these ends something because they're getting uppity and they will use their newfound political power against us. We will give them something that is worthless. That was the Civil Rights Act back then. He said, we will have these ends voting for us for the next 200 years. This is the mentality of the Democrat leadership, not the average registered Democrat. The Democrat leadership has politicized everything. So these are the differences that are happening in this election cycle. If we look back 4 years from now, and let's say Joe Biden gets elected, we're going to look back and our country is not going to look the same. Our civil rights, our freedoms, everything is not going to look the same. If President Trump gets reelected, I'm sure there's going to be major civil unrest because the left, just like in Hillary Clinton's laws, will not accept President Trump's win. However, he's going to continue, how would you say, draining the swamp, because our DOJ, our FBI, our CIA, all of our judges, they've all been politicized. They sit there and they legislate by judicial activism. It's got to stop. We have to have a country based on law and order. We have to have a country that's based on justice, and justice is blind. There was a big stink, a dust up about President Trump giving Roger Stone amnesty, forbearing his prison sentence. He didn't completely erase it. He's still a felon. He just didn't let him go to prison. All right. President Trump has had 22 pardons so far. At the same time, Barack Obama had over 1,180 pardons in his presidency. So far, President Trump has had the least pardons of any president in the last 10 presidents, but yet the left can't handle it.
And Bill Clinton's infamous pardon of Mark Rich, one of his biggest donors.
Biggest criminal, known felon. Yeah, they all forget about it and they don't make a dust up about it. So you look at it and you say, this is all politicized. It's completely politicized. If you go back in there's an interview by William G. Griffin with a KGB operative that defected to the United States. He said flat out back in 1984 that the Soviet Union has a 4-step process. First one is the demoralization. And you do that through generations of schools. You infiltrate the schools, you rip away the patriotism, you make them feel worthless, you make them feel that there's no incentive, you make them forget what their country is about. They have done that in breakneck speed. They did it in 25 years. They have been able to influence 3 generations without a doubt. The next one is destabilization. That gets into the market systems, it gets into manufacturing, it gets into the attitudes of the individuals within this country. They don't care about what they eat. What was Michelle Obama's big push was the obesity in America. And that's the number one problem with the COVID-19 is obesity. That'll attack you big time.
Average of 16 pounds that Americans have gained since the lockdowns.
Exactly. But that's all part of the destabilization along with the demoralization. Then you go into, and that averaged about 15 years to 20 years. So you're looking at a 25-year process, another 20-year process, 15 to 20-year process. Then it goes into the crisis mode. Now, remember, this all started in not the 70s. Okay. China jumped in the late 80s to buttress up Russia because when Russia fell. Okay. So China got involved. So now we're in the crisis mode. Now, remember in the beginning, Rebecca, of the COVID-19, all of the Democrats are talking about this. There's going to be the new norm, the new normal. Right? The new normal. They're not talking about that so much anymore because I think during the crisis mode, they got such a pushback from the Americans across the board, both Republicans and Democrats are saying, what are you doing? So we're in a crisis mode right now. And this is where they're trying to take advantage of stripping us of more of our freedoms, more of our rights, more of the civil rights, and more of the norms and make it their norms. We have to be very careful. This election is not about right or wrong, left or right, up or down. This is about, as Joe Biden would say, this is about the very fundamental values of this great nation. And it's not the new progressive values. These are the values that our founding fathers gave us, which is found in the Declaration of Independence and the inalienable rights of our Creator that bestowed us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the importance of this election.
I am sure that you disagree with the incumbent on quite a few more issues. Now let's talk about one of them, and that is illegal immigration and border security. Would you please tell us what your stand is on those 2 issues?
We have to secure the border. There's no questions about it. I mean, that's just it.
And how do we do that?
President Reagan wanted to do that in his tenure. He made a deal with the Democrats. The Democrats basically crawled out on securing the border. He went ahead and gave amnesty for quite a few of the illegal immigrants. Now, remember, illegal immigration goes way broad than just our southern border. It gets into visa overstays, gets into all kinds of different aspects of the immigration policies. They all have to be addressed. But our biggest threat to national security is the border. So we have to have that border wall. The border wall will not do it alone. The border wall is only just like a fence around your yard. The fence around your yard isn't going to stop somebody who wants to get in your yard and knock on the door. They're going to figure out how to get in. They're going to tunnel underneath. They're going to jump over. They're going to cut a hole through it. They're going to do whatever they can. All the wall is another resource to allow the limited resources of our border agents to be able to go to other areas. I did a major interview in Pinal County with Sheriff Mark Lamb, along with a couple other individuals. I'm trying to think of their names right now. But one of them had a major ranch. Jim is his first name. I got to know him well, but I forget his last name. But he was talking about the drug cartels there. They don't have guns. They don't do them. But there was such an operation involved of putting scouts on the top of the mountains. They know how to create deflectors over here. So the Border Patrol will go over there. They'll call in 911. Somebody is sick. They'll have to go over there and get them while they're muling the drugs over here. They estimate 80% of all the drugs come through that one corridor. Your mind says, well, if they know 80% of the drugs come through this 26-mile corridor, why aren't they just fencing it up? How many communities are being destroyed by illegal drugs? Fentanyl.
And who is against that? Who is against
Mostly
that area where the drugs come in and it's a known area? Who is against saying we need to put up a fence there?
Right now, it's the Democrat leadership. If you go back 10 years, Barack Obama was saying the same thing. We need to secure the borders. If you go back, Chuck Schumer was saying the same thing. If you go back, Nancy Pelosi was saying the same thing. Joe Biden saying the same thing. Nancy Pelosi and her, when she became the senator, she was saying the same thing in her campaign speeches about how illegal immigrants are stealing our jobs. We need to secure the borders. This is the political football once again. This is the morals and values of our great nation that are at stake. It's not just a wall. It's about securing the border from threats from outside and inside. Now, if you dive in deeper, as I've done, I've gone out to the border. I've gone out and I've seen some of the brothels that are there, that they have 13-year-old Hispanic females that are coming from Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. They're in there and they're basically being raped 20 to 30 times a day for $20 a shot.
Heartbreaking.
It is worse than heartbreaking. It's the worst human trafficking you've ever seen. These are the stories that are not being brought about. The stories they want to bring about is, the poor children that are put into the cages. Well, those are only temporary until they get, processed and transferred out. If you go to the final destination of where they're at, they're actually beautiful, beautiful facilities they have. We're the most compassionate nation on the face of the earth. We don't put children in cages because we want them in cages. We put them in there because Congress refuses to give the border agents and the border facilities and that agency the proper resources to process over 1 million people a year. Think about 1 million people a year. That's a lot of people. Okay, they don't give them money and the resources to do it. But you look at that. Now you get into what other things that we can do. We need to normalize economic policy with Central America, Mexico, and South America. My plan, if elected, would to be building up that relationship to the point where North America, in conjunction with Canada, we don't have problems with Canada, but then you get into Mexico, Central America, and South America, should be the biggest stronghold of these two continents. Should be the biggest economic stronghold that nobody could threaten because we're all in solidarity together. If you develop those kind of relationships, I don't care what kind of governments they have. They can have a socialist government. They can have, just basically socialist, communist governments down there. It's all socialists or dictators. If they are operating at the behest and the best interest of their people, which is now we come in there and we help them develop an economic infrastructure that will create a stability and a stable economy for them to supply the basic living needs and requirements for everybody in their country. We would have normalization. We'd be able to have passports going back and forth, no problems at all. We wouldn't have a threat. But right now, because of the drug cartels that are there, there's a major threat. Because we have terrorists that can get into South America quite easily, we have a major threat that can just walk across our border. So that's another major aspect of it. Then we have to reform our immigration laws. I think we should stop, and I do agree, stopping or limiting the chain migration, to the immediate family. Because once we normalize economies, the families can come across back and forth, visit each other without a problem. You go back. There's no reason why they need to become a permanent resident or a citizen of America if you can go back and forth. Because if you've been to Central America and South America, it's beautiful territory, a lot of resources down there, beautiful people as well. Okay, we just need to get rid of that corruption. So if we normalize that, we get rid of the chain migration limited to the immediate families, then we get rid of the lottery system. We need to redefine the refugee status. We need to create the refugee status that you go to your embassy or your consul general's office to get that. You have to do it in the immediate nation next to your country, next to the one you're trying to flee. We need to redefine all of those aspects. We do all of those things, we will start limiting the problems that we have.
And also, I'm sure you are for interior enforcement of
absolutely.
The sanctuary cities. You can close the borders, but visa overstays, people who dug tunnels under the ground and get into this country. If we don't do interior enforcement, the number of illegal aliens in our country is going to keep going up as it has. It's been 11 million people for the past 20 years.
That's a low number.
Can anyone imagine that in the past 20 some odd years, the number of illegal aliens has not gone up? It's unfathomable. This is not correct. So we're not even getting the right numbers. It's because there's no will to report the right number because it's a red flag for us.
You're touching on an extremely important aspect of immigration, and that is interior enforcement. Now, think about the parallel, okay, in your home when you're raising children. If you just let them do whatever they want, you have interior chaos. Then they go out in the world and they create more exterior chaos. So we have to have that interior enforcement to stop that chaos from taking place. Because what's happening on the exterior is, once you're there, you get to stay for 30, 40 years. You can get around it. There's no problems. Okay. That creates the exterior to come into the interior, creating more interior chaos. So interior enforcement is extremely important. We have to have it. We are a nation built on law and order. That's all there is to it. We have laws. The laws only mean something if you enforce them, which gets into the whole aspect of the biggest thing about, in America with the Democrat leadership is gun control. Okay. They want to take everybody's guns away. People say, oh, no, they don't. They do. Based on policies, they're slowly but surely removing guns. Well, there's 350 million registered guns. There's probably 300 million unregistered guns. If we really had a gun problem, there would be a lot more deaths than what we have now. We have other issues that are creating those problems to come about, especially on school campuses. If we look at the mental health of society, it gets into one of our favorite subjects is mental health. If you dive in, and it's not that all mental health are violent. That's not the issue.
Actually, a great majority are not
violent. They're not violent.
They're just miserable, but not violent.
Exactly. The psychiatric community has come out and said 1 out of every 5 people in America has a mental health issue. What degree and debilitating that is, we don't know until you get help. Now, President Reagan removed the funding of short-term and long-term mental health care hospitals because of the corruption that was going on and abuse through the court systems and the hospitals, removed it. The psychiatric community went to psychiatry by prescription. That's all they had. They couldn't do short-term hospitalization of individuals to find the baseline, what was happening to that person. This gets even into high school. Think about this in high school. You have a child that's there. They have a great family. The kid's showing up, getting good grades, dressed up nice every day. All of a sudden, things start falling apart. They notice it at school. He's showing up disheveled. He's not dressed up right. He might start doing some drugs, smoking weed. He starts creating problems. His grades go into the tank. What's there now to help that kid? Absolutely nothing.
There's no support out there for the kid until he takes arms and shoots everybody else because he's completely lost it.
Well, they have a requirement, a therapist, not a psychiatrist, but a therapist is there. They have mandated that the number is 2,500 students per therapist. They don't even have that. They're at 4,000 students now per therapist. So they're completely understaffed. They don't see it. They don't know. There is no summer training for teachers to see these things. There's no protocols to send it to a guidance counselor, from the guidance counselor to the therapist to a psychiatrist, and creating a very private method of being able to get the family help, because there's a reason why that kid is showing up at school like that. Maybe the parents are getting divorced. Maybe one of the parents got into drugs. Maybe there's sexual abuse going on. Maybe there's physical abuse going on. Maybe there's an abuse going on the parents don't even know. An uncle came in or an aunt came in and did something. Maybe a gardener came in. You don't know. You absolutely don't know. But if you catch it when they're in high school, and you can help the family, you can help the individual
or even
child.
Maybe younger than high school.
Even younger.
In middle school, elementary school.
Even younger. You can start seeing signs.
Because right now, there are a lot of kids in elementary school who demonstrate
definitely have problems.
anxiety,
Yes.
depression, suicidal thoughts,
Yes.
even if we go even earlier than high school.
You have it, because the developmental stages of the child is the emotional toolbox. How are they dealing with emotions? How are they getting from point A to point B to point C? Are they getting the tools they need to be able to deal with life? So you're absolutely right. I'm all for it going all the way through. But I don't believe in the psychiatry by prescription either. Because if a child is doing that, the first thing, because we've known this, one of my grandkids was very disruptive, and they sent him to the therapist. The first thing the therapist wants to do is put him on drugs. It's like, I don't know. That isn't happening. You have a child that has emotional outbursts of some kind. You have to find out why. Talk to them. Let them get it out of them. They have to release it and get it out. If you're just going to give them a drug and numb it, that's like cutting your finger and saying, okay, I'm not going to address the cut, but I'm just going to take painkillers all day. It'll go away. It's not going to go away. The cut's going to stay there. It's not going to go away. You have to address the causation of what's taking place. If we did that, we would stop the resurgence or the addition of more people in society. They're committing crimes. They're becoming homeless. They're becoming incapable of getting jobs. And we will help society. Now, with the problem that's on the floor now that's going on and heavy in the San Fernando Valley is the homeless. First of all, it's misidentified. It's not just homelessness because New York wanted to put housing first. Washington State wanted to do housing first. San Francisco wanted to do housing first under Gavin Newsom. He spent billions of dollars. LA is doing the same thing. We gave them $3.5 billion. They spent all the money. There's no transitional housing. Okay, you're looking at over 55,000 individuals that live on the streets. These are people that have been released from jail. These are people with psychotic issues going on. These are people that have drug issues that are going on. These are society's misfits in a lot of different ways because the ones that have the wherewithal to get help, they're going to get help. And there's a lot of great programs with nonprofit organizations out there. There's a lot of churches out there. There's a lot of county and city programs that are out there to help the ones that want to get help. But it's inhumane to continue this policy
Absolutely.
Of no compulsory programs. We have to establish, and I have it on my website at Mark Reed for Congress, I have a cooperative program between the feds, the state, the counties, and the cities. I've been able to give people the help that they need. They need the help.
In 2004, California voters approved a special tax to help the mentally ill.
Right.
And that brings in about $1 billion a year.
Right.
The mental illness policy.org did an extensive study. I think it's about 60 pages of research. A lot of the think tanks and psychiatrists were involved, and they said that $1 out of every $5 brought in is going towards fraud, waste, and abuse.
I would tend to believe it's higher than that. I really do. And it's because you have to look at when the Democrat leadership constantly wants to consolidate power into one area. They want to get it all into Washington, D.C. So let's say they pass a bill and they say, okay, we're going to give $10 billion. Okay, the $10 billion as half goes to a major state agency. The state agency is going to take their cuts. Okay, the state agencies are going to dish it out to the nonprofits. They're going to take their cuts. They're going to send it out to their vendors. They take their cuts. It's about 10 cents on the dollar. You know, you've seen this through the VA systems. You've seen that through the organizations for housing for veterans, psychiatric help for veterans. It's about 10 cents on the dollar. If $1 out of every $5 went, that's a high percentage. It's not horrid, you know, but it's still horrid in that respect. Because I know a lot of philanthropists that will look at any organization, nonprofit organization, and they'll say, if they're 15% and more for administration, we're not donating money to them. So 85 cents on the dollar should be going to the end user. But because of Democrat leadership, they want to centralize power in D.C. What happens? You're just increasing the amount of fingers getting into the pot. Think about that with education. You have the education in Washington, D.C.
And you advocate for abolishment of the Department of Education.
If not abolishment, a extreme limitation of what they can and can't do.
Bring it local.
They can send out recommendations, create recommendations for local entities.
But you know how government is.
Oh, absolutely.
You give them a little power, and then before you know it, it's expanded beyond limits.
Well, that's the camel's nose in the tent theory. Okay, so you look at that and you say, you limit what they can do. It's really creating based on they have a massive think tank. Every school board in every state, in every county, has successes. What is working? They need to create this think tank, basically, to come into DC. DC puts it out. It's got to be based on regions, because every different region has different needs. This is the same thing with our Ivy League colleges right now, where you have Harvard that has a multi-billion-dollar foundation, but yet the government still is funding all of the degrees that we put out there. This is something I agreed with Elizabeth Warren on. One of the few things I do. She came out and said,
I want to hear this.
Oh, yeah. No, it's actually two things I liked what she said. And that was about it. Everything else is, it's worthless. She said the United States needs to evaluate what it needs for its economy. And that's the degrees that we fund. We will back the funding for. Everything else, if you want to learn basket weaving at Harvard, then Harvard can pay for it or you can pay for it. But America needs an engineer. So if you want to become an engineer, we will back that loan. We will fund it. If you get into that field and if you work for the government, okay, in that field, we will start erasing your debt. Okay, we want to encourage our economy to go. The only way you can encourage the economy to go is realize your greatest asset that you have in your country is your people. You need to educate them, but you don't give them worthless degrees. 48% of all college graduates are unemployed or working at minimum wage in a field that they did not study in.
Like
48%.
AOC, after her master's degree,
Master's degree in economics.
And worked for a bar.
Yeah.
And she got lucky in her district and became a congresswoman. But with her master's degree in economics, she was not able to get a job.
But how valuable is that economics degree that she had? Because if you're good in economics, you can find jobs.
And that's economics, let alone basket weaving.
But there's a lot of fields in economics you can go into.
Absolutely.
Estate planning, working for companies. But that tells you her personality. What was her drive? If she had this economics degree, see, this is why college isn't the end all. It is definitely not the end all. Okay, I have 2 years in junior college, and I just looked at it and said, I want to make money. So I went out and I got into business administration right away. Right, I became managers and business reps and stuff for companies. And I didn't even like that after a while. So I bought my first company at 26 years old. And this is great. I sold that one. I bought another company, opened a retail store. I've been the national rep for American Indians, dealing with government issues.
You're part American Indian,
yes,
isn't that correct?
I'm part Mohawk, a descendant of the Mohawk and the Apache. So I've been flown throughout the country to talk on diversity. I've sat on some of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition panels. I do believe in opportunity and creating opportunity for people. I don't think you should be given opportunity if you're substandard. You should be given the opportunity to get education to become qualified to get it, right? But, I have done so much in life because you have to have that drive. Now, you can give somebody a degree. You can give them a law degree. Just because you have a law degree doesn't mean you're going to be a lawyer. You still have to have the tenacity to go and solicit a law firm, get hired by that law firm, do a great job with cases, right? That you would get up into that firm and maybe become a partner or junior partner, right? Or you become a doctor. It's the same thing. You have to start your own practice. You can become in the what do you call it, in the clothing industry. My neighbor, they got into design of clothing. They didn't teach him anything about business. So he said they started up 3 different businesses with clothes. They failed, every one of them. He said, we realized that designing clothes and manufacturing clothes is a lot different than retail aspects of it. So they had to partner up with somebody to get both aspects going. You can have a degree, but you have to have the drive to implement that degree. And this is what kids have to understand.
And going back to agreeing with Elizabeth Warren on what our country needs.
Fund what the country needs.
We need, but going back to AOC and economics, how many economics graduates do we need? Like, for instance, right now, USC is producing a lot of endodontists.
Right.
And they are flooding the market with endodontists. Do we need as many? Or do we need philosophy majors? And if you do, if somebody likes philosophy major to be a philosophy major, that's fine. But don't ask the government to foot the bill when you're going to be working as a waiter.
See,
it's not justice to yourself, first of all.
That's part of what...
And then the taxpayer.
That's part of what the restructuring of the Federal Department of Education should be involved in, is analyzing, following graduates following their careers and seeing what this country needs. Maybe we need this many this year. Okay, we fund them. Okay, they produce too many of them, so we draw back. You're not going to get it anymore. We'll continue funding the ones that are in the pipeline, but from this year forward, we're not funding them anymore. We're not going to do it. If the school wants to do it, great. Okay, they've got the endowments, they have the abilities of doing it. But if the country doesn't need it, and there's too many of them, you're doing a disservice to that student by creating a debt, 100,000s plus. Okay, you're doing a disservice to that student because now you're going to break their back. They study like the Dickens for years. They get their degree and then they get out in the real world and it's like, I can't get employed. What's up? I'm $200,000 in debt. And I don't even own a house. I live in mom's basement still. We have, that's where the Department of Education can oversee these Ivy League colleges. But the Ivy League colleges are not being overseen by anybody. This is why it came out that with the Confucius Institutes from China and foreign money being given to them, foreign donations into the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is where foreign policy has to dive in. This is where the Department of Education has to oversee. This is where Congress needs to look at and say, what is happening to our Ivy League? What is happening to the students that are in there? The main reason to go to school is one reason: to establish the tools necessary to become independent and self-sustaining, productive individual in America. If our colleges and our high schools aren't producing those students, something's wrong. And we're not. We're not producing them.
And because the government is funding any and all students who want to go to school, the cost of tuition keeps going up because they're dealing with a deep-pocketed government who will fund all majors, all students, no matter what. And so there's no incentive in keeping the cost. They can charge as much as they want and they'll be paid.
If the average person in America really looked into the college structure, the Ivy League structures, they would see that it's a clubhouse. You're not even going there for the education. You're going there for the contacts. How many contacts can I get? This is why you have that hopelessness in these rioters, the protesters' eyes right now, the youngsters, 35 and under. They have this hopelessness look because they're never going to get those contacts. They're never going to be in that pool of fish to be able to fish. They're stuck over here. Okay, they're kicked out. They can't get in there, and they know it. And I don't like it either. I think it's fair. I don't think it's even right. But we have to do systemic changes in order to create that opportunity for everybody. But you can't sit back on your loins. Like I said, I have 2 years of junior college. I have high school. I went out. I'm somewhat I wouldn't say very successful, but I am successful. I'm happy, put it that way. I'm not going to rely on Social Security or anything else. We'll be making good money when I'm retired. Okay, I'm taking $100,000 loss if I'm lucky enough and blessed to become a congressman. I'll take $100,000 drop in pay. Okay, so it's not for that. It's to create that atmosphere of opportunity for the kids, the generations that are coming up. It's like Ted Kennedy pounded his fist on the Senate podium. He says, I'm not here to represent the rich. They know how to do that job on their own, and they do a damn good job at it. I'm here to represent the poor against the rich because they need that oversight. That's my same philosophy because wealthy people are driven. They're just driven. You look at President Trump, he was a driven kid. It didn't matter. He was going to be a billionaire regardless of what you said. He was a driven individual. He went through 3 marriages because he's driven. He went through bankruptcy. He's driven. He's driven. He's going to get there regardless. All 4 wheels come off the car. He's going to get there. Okay. Those are the people that have to be watched after sometimes because you have a lot of corrupt ones out there that will take advantage of people who just want to have their own apartment. They want to have a nice house. They want to have their wife or their husband, and 1 kid, 1 dog, the white picket fence around there. They want to be left alone. You have to have, this is where government does have a purpose of protecting their interest. And right now, the interest of them is being completely stepped on and destroyed in the state of California. Now you have, coming on November, the split roll, where they're going to charge differently property taxes for commercial properties. Okay, think about that for a moment. All of your cost of living is going to go up. Think about the next one. We have a homeless problem going on in the state of California. The cost of housing is skyrocketing, so high. Well, rentals, apartment buildings is commercial property. Your rent's going up. Some of these people are right now living paycheck to paycheck. You drive that up, okay, you're going to put more people out on the streets, or you're going to have to create a subsidy program that everybody else is going to have to pay taxes on. And you're going to drive more of the middle class, more of the wealthy out of the state of California. If you look at what the Democrat leadership constantly talks about, the income inequality, the wealth difference, the wealth split between the poor and the rich, you have it right here in California. California is 1/10 of the population of the United States of America. We have 48% of the welfare recipients in the state of California. You have the highest percentage of millionaires in the state of California. You have the highest percentage of billionaires in the state of California. The income gap is immense.
And that's what the Democrats are fighting.
That's what the Democrats say they're fighting.
Created in the state that they control, because there is no statewide Republicans elected in California. No. It's entirely run by Democrats. And they have created this income inequality that they are profusely fighting against.
They have been in control of the state of California for since the 80s. Okay, so they've destroyed it. Even here in the city of Los Angeles, I've always, they will go after. There's two Republicans that are in the city politics, city and county politics. You have Elizabeth Barger in the County Board of Supervisors, one Republican, 4 progressive Democrats. In the city council, you have John Lee, one Republican. He went to independent, but he's a Republican. Then you have 14 Democrats. People will sit there and argue that John Lee is the problem. He's the problem. Well, wait a minute. Think about this. You have 14 votes to 1 vote. Everything John Lee proposes can get thrown out the door. Everything he asks for can get thrown out the door. He has to play a horrid game because you have 14 people. So if there's a mess in the city of Los Angeles, it's not the one Republican, it's the 14 Democrats.
But they want absolutely no opposition.
They want nothing, and they want ultimate control. Same thing with Elizabeth Barger. Your most powerful people in a county is your 5 county board supervisors. They control a mass amount of money. Okay, those 5, 1 Republican. Those other 4 votes can annul anything Elizabeth puts out there. Everything. So everybody wants to blame this one Republican for all the ills that are going on in Los Angeles County. It's like, wait a minute. No, it's the other 4 Democrats. Maybe you should think about taking a major risk and flushing them all out. Okay? Get rid of them all.
Mark Reed, time is short and topics abundant. So I'm going to ask you my last question, your view on taxes. California is one of the highest taxing states in the union. And if you go to Washington, elected in November of this year, federally, what is your view on taxation? What will you do? What is your plan on that?
Well, Ronald Reagan expressed it quite well. It's not, the problem isn't that we're not taxed enough. The problem is the government spends too much. Okay. You look at the last tax reform was Ronald Reagan, and then this recent one from President Trump. There's issues in that one as well that we have to address. There's some of it in the capital gains taxation. We need to readdress that again. And I know Marco Rubio has looked at it and said he wants to address it. There's several that are looking at addressing that one. And I have something on my website about that. The other one is as simple and basic as this. A school teacher goes out and buys supplies, goes out and buys things for her classroom. She can no longer write that off. She or he can no longer write it off on her taxes. Same thing with...
That's only in California or federal?
That's federal. That's under federal tax. That's across the nation. We need to look at that and readdress that. They should be able to write it off. A police officer, the same thing. They go out and they buy more uniforms. They're given a stipend for 1 uniform. Okay, and that's it. They get, I think it's like $1,500. I know, so my family have been cops for a long time, ever since my great-grandfather. A cop will spend probably $5,000 to $10,000 out of their own pocket, and they can't even write it off.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so there's things, taxes that we do need to address. There's absolutely. We need to continue addressing our ability to compete worldwide on the world markets. And our taxes have created us to be non-competitive because things are too high. So yes, I will work diligently to lowering taxes, creating the tax write-offs that are necessary for the average person, not the multi-billionaires and millionaires, for the average person, the people who need it the most, the people who are serving our great communities, school teachers, police officers, any individual that is spending money on their work and they're a W-2 wage earner, they should be able to write it off as an extra write-off. There's no questions about it. So yes, taxes, I work very hard in lowering them, creating them to become more equitable for the average individual in the United States.
Is there one topic that drives you really forcefully to run for office, and also, do you have a message for our viewers, those who are watching this interview? Please take your time, and you have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you, Rebecca. Well, my main thrust, my main drive for running is what our founding fathers warned this great republic about, and that is two-party system cannot work. It'll fail. You're dividing the house, and it'll collapse from within. So I don't believe in party politics. I believe in policies. We have been lacking true representation in the West San Fernando Valley for the last 20 years, 24 years since my opponent was elected. I was born and raised here 63 years ago. This was a great community. It has gone through massive change, not for the best. We need somebody who understands that they're not there to represent the Republican Party. They're not there to represent the Democrat Party. They're there to represent 720 constituents, 720,000 constituents. That's what they're to represent, the interest of those constituents. That's what I want to bring to the table. That's what I want to bring to the office of the 30th Congressional District. The one major issue that's going on in the San Fernando Valley, to me, that is horrendous, it breaks my heart more than anything, is the mental health and the drug addiction on the streets. The policy that is there to leave them there. There is no compulsory programs. There is absolutely nothing to help these people out. The incumbent, my opponent, believes in letting it go, believes in the lawlessness that's taking place, believes in the complete disruption of the quality of life and security of life that the residents of the San Fernando Valley has. I won't do that. I believe we need to be compassionate. I believe we need to be strong, but I do believe we need to take action. We need to be proactive and not reactive. If elected, this is what I'll bring to the table, along with the expertise of my career and my past. I hope to have your vote come November 3rd. Thank you again, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Mark. Wish you all of the best, success,
Absolutely.
and hopefully you'll be going to Washington in January of 2021.
That's right.
Our dear viewers, if you liked what you heard, and if you believe that Mark Reed, with his solutions and his views of the issues, are what you need, then vote for him. And it's just not enough for you to vote for him. It's so much better if you take a friend and introduce them to Mark Reed, to his issues, and how he would like to solve the problems of our country, and especially your district. Then please register today, take a friend with you or two, and freedom is not free. That's what we need to do. And things don't just happen magically. We need to work hard for what we believe in and what we would like to happen in our country. So I plead with you to take an active role in our politics and exercise your constitutional right to vote on every election. Thank you very much.